Hi guys, I wanted to do a new video series on my 1951 Lanchester LD10 rat rod project. It's actually based on a 1969 VW Beetle floor pan. So I thought I'd do a little walk around. Not that there's a lot to walk around because it's just a kind of a shell at the minute. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ping up a load of photos, so photos of when I bought it and some of the work that was done on it, and hopefully where it's going to go back to at some point in the future. So about 3 years ago, I was on eBay actually looking for parts for another car, another Beetle I had, which was being restored by a friend. And just by chance, they say the Lanchester popped up in my searches, and I just fell in love with it. And it's a kind of a weird one, really, because I've never been into the whole old English car thing or the Ford Pop kind of hot rod look at all. But yeah, I'd say we're going to go and have a look at this one. So we jumped in the car and tootled down to a place called Dubs and Classics. Met a really interesting guy there. He was doing some interesting stuff in his garage, well, roof chops and stuff on Beetles. Rather weirdly, he was doing a roof chop with a roof that was off one of my cars. A small world and all, and all that. So down there he had the Lanchester. He had it. So he was sat on a pan. He had the V8 engine in the back of it actually, but it wasn't running. I don't think at the time. And yeah, I just fell in love with this car. So I contacted my mate who was doing the restoration on the Beetle, and I said because he was doing that part time, a bit at a time. Is there something you can do at the same time, alongside it? And he agreed to that. So had a flutter on eBay and won it. So I didn't really expect to, but it went for my top bid, which was kind of shocking. Um, so he came and collected the car and started working on it, straightened out the front because there was bits and pieces to do on that. Did things like bead rolled the wings and strengthened the wings and chopped them down a bit because they were dragging on the floor because it's so low. Started modifying the suspension because the plan was to have a single bag up front and then a couple of bags at the back, doing all that sort of thing. And then unfortunately in 2018 there was a fire, and in that fire I lost the car he was restoring for me, the Beetle, and I lost basically all the parts I'd bought for the Lanchester, and to restore the floor pan and all the parts that came with the Lanchester, so all the original clocks and steering wheels and all that sort of stuff. It's all gone. So now we're kind of back to less than square one, which is a bit of a rubbish place to be starting from. So since then it's come home. It's come back here. I've managed to source a good floor pan from a guy up in Scotland. That's a 69 bug pan. It came with a 1300 gearbox. So the pan itself is amazing condition, really. It's got a little bit of modification to the tunnel which needs rectifying. I don't know why they cut a hole in it, but that needs to go back. And then it just needs a lick of paint, I think, really. And the jacking point's removing because it's going to be low, this one. The gearbox, I say, is a standard 1300 gearbox. So we need to take that off and we need to put some short axles and tubes on there. And then we can use the early brakes, wide 5, so we can use the wide 5 wheels. The front suspension is a 9-inch narrowed beam, which is kind of a crazy amount of lowering. But it has been modified for an airbag as well, so we need to retrofit the adjusters back on because they've been removed, and say I can't afford to put it on air at the minute. So that might be something we do in the future. But for the time being, it's going to go back on standard Beetle suspension as such. However, it'll be quite low. On the rear, I've got some notch spring plates. I may look into some Z plates or whatever they call them, so it keeps the geometry on the back a bit more normal, more possibly adjustables. But I'll look into that if I can find something for the right sort of money. Otherwise, we'll just stick to the notch plates, I think. Say the brakes will be wide 5, early wide 5, and that means I can fit the wheels back on. The wheels I bought for it were some BTR slots, and I paid stupid amount of money for them, unfortunately, because I've got a bit of a fetish for slot mags. I don't know what it is. And I saw these wide 5 slots, and I actually saw them a few years ago on a splitty, and the guy refused to tell me what they were. So I was hunting for some for some time after that. And as I say, these came up for sale secondhand, and say I bit his arm off, but unfortunately, it took a fair chunk to do that. They were fully lacquered and they were the secondhand tires, but new tires on there, and they were white walled, and say unfortunately they were involved in the fire as well. So all the lacquer's been discoloured, and all the tires and that are all knackered, so it all needs sorting out again. So we're stripping those wheels and starting from scratch. Engine wise, the plan was to have an 1835 in there, which I got a few years ago. That's actually the engine I tried to start in the engine starter video, if you actually watched it a few weeks ago. You probably noticed it doesn't start very happily, and that's because it was actually close to the fire. It wasn't in the fire, but it was close to the fire, so everything got scorched. Everything that scorched got scorched, and everything that was plastic kind of melted and crozzled. So that was being fully stripped and rebuilt, and the biggest issue was the fireman filled it full of water, and so that's why it had to be completely stripped down and rebuilt. So that's been done. However, the carbs have been stripped down and rebuilt twice, and they still don't bloody work. So I think there's an issue with the idle and main jets are blocked. So they're going to come off probably in a future video, and they're going to go in the ultrasonic cleaner and some proper carb cleaner, and we'll see if that sorts them out. Fingers crossed it will do. I do have a backup engine, which is a 1776, and before you say, "Oh, you've got too many engines, you git," it's an engine I built with my father over 20 years ago. It needs a complete rebuild. It's got inflow, and I've blown the oil seal out of it, having too much fun. Great little motor we built, but that might go in there as well. I'm not sure yet, because I want to keep the 1835 possibly for another project I'll show you about later. Long term, I was thinking going Scooby. Obviously Beefcake Scooby, so I've got kind of a bit of knowledge now around that. And I was thinking going something simple like a 2.2 injection, so I can keep the stock box. So it's not too crazy. And obviously having the grill at the front makes it absolutely ideal for having a water-cooled engine in there. However, I'm slightly scared of having to go for, I'm not sure if it's called a Vocho check or whatever the check is, where they come look at your car and they say, "Oh, that's no longer a Volkswagen, you've got to Q-plate it." So I'm trying to avoid that. And obviously every single component on there has to be kind of original to get a point towards it being an original Volkswagen. So if I keep the engine as a Volkswagen, if I keep the gearbox and the suspension as original parts, albeit slightly modified, I'll get points for those hopefully, and it'll just be a body swap like a buggy. So I'm hoping, I'm keeping it Volkswagen for the time being just for that reason, because I don't want to have the issue of it being Q-plated or something. Long term though, rather than Subaru, I'm actually more seriously considering now electrifying it. And I know that's kind of a heathen thing to say, because electric's far too clean for our smoky old Volkswagens. But no, again, it's kind of made for it. There's plenty of room at the front for batteries. There's plenty of room in the back for batteries. So it's all Volkswagen setup. You can bolt straight to the gearbox, and it's got a huge boot in the back. So again, it does play into that kind of modification, and it's kind of something. Obviously, it's kind of future-proofing it a bit. And I'm curious to see how easy it is to do. It does look relatively straightforward, and the cost of electrifying a car seems to be around the same price as building a decent Beetle engine these days. So yeah, so I think that might be something that happens in a new series or further down the line in the Lanchester series, but we'll see. But say something I'm interested in doing. So yeah, you're welcome to subscribe and like or do whatever you want to do. And hopefully when I make the next update, which is probably working on the floor pan and gearbox and beam and stuff, hopefully it'll ping up and you can follow the next video. Cheers guys, take care.